Hey guys, it's Andrea with Sucs For You in Houston, Texas, and I wanted to talk real quick about watering your succulents, your outdoor succulents, when it starts to cool off, wherever you're located. In Houston, of course, we have a very long growing season where the temperatures stay above 70 degrees, like 9 months out of the year. We did have a cold front come through a couple days ago. It didn't come with any rain, got down to about 50 was a wake up low and then warmed up to about 75. And it's going to start warming up again over the next, week. And again, there's no rain in sight. So for us here, we don't have to worry about cutting back on watering just yet. But what I would suggest is to start cutting back on fertilizing, because not only are the days getting shorter, the sun is moving. It's going to be a little lower on the horizon, so you're not going to get that, nice blast of overhead light. If you're growing like I am, I get some nice bright east-facing sun most of the afternoon, and usually the sun is like right here, right? But now when it comes up and over, it's over here on the side. So we have this tree that's filled out its leaves, and that's going to offer some shade, but it's like we don't really want all that shade right now. I still want good light on my plants, especially like my cacti. So if you're still feeding your plants and they're not getting enough light, that can cause some stretching. And when it does start to cool off, as winter approaches, what you want to do is let your plants enjoy like some pretty cool temperatures, right? And definitely not above 45 or so. But what that does is help encourage a natural dormancy. And a lot of succulents, particularly cacti, need a cool period to produce flowers. It's called vernalization. It's where they go through a period of cold temperatures. They get to rest. They're not actively growing, but there's still stuff going on inside. So what I'm going to do is just be real careful about how I water. That means I'm not going to be soaking them weekly. I do want to start encouraging that dormancy, but I also still want to get in, another month or so of this growing season that we have. So at least our 10-day forecast, which is as far as I can see out, is highs in the upper 80s, which is lovely, lows in the mid 60s or so, which is still totally fine for watering your succulents. But again, we are getting less light, so this is the time of year where I actually I fertilized last week when I watered, and that's probably going to be the last time that I do so until spring. So it's good, it's ideal even for a lot of succulents to allow them to experience some cooler temps. Again, not terribly cold for too long, but definitely, majority are going to be fine down to 50 degrees. The trick is you don't want them to be wet. You don't want the roots to be wet in cold temperatures. But if you can find that balance of, okay, I've got some warm sunny days and I'm gonna get a few more rounds of watering in over the next several weeks, then go for it. So at that point, if you're like, I know it's gonna freeze, or I know it's gonna be too cold and I need to bring them inside, what do you do then? I talk a lot about overwintering and grow lights in my book, The Succulent Manual. In the second edition, I expanded on those topics because a lot of people had, a lot of questions about how do I keep my plants happy when I have to have them indoors for a few months or longer. The main thing is to understand that, active growth versus dormancy in your plants is going to affect how they grow, how much light you get inside, how warm it is. That's all going to either encourage or discourage growth. And unless you have a really great grow light system, and even just the right plants and some supplemental sunlight from a window nearby, and you're able to keep it nice and warm inside, you will actually want to encourage dormancy rather than encourage active growth while your plants are indoors. Because if they're actively growing inside and you don't have enough light, they will start stretching out and reaching for the sun, reaching for the nearest source of light. The leaves won't stay compact. If you're going like a rosette, they're going to start like stacking, like their stacks will be, instead of like close together, they start growing in along the stem further and further apart. Doesn't look very great. It doesn't mean they're like unhealthy, but just kind of trying to keep them as close to true form as you can. And your rosettes are going to be the hardest to keep in good form indoors, so I do highly recommend a grow light for them if you need to bring them inside, and a good grow light. And again, I talk about finding a good grow light, like a quality, powerful light, in my book. And if you have more plants like this, this is a Euphorbia aeruginosa, and you can see it's kind of wild. So if it's not getting enough light, it's going to be really hard to tell if it's stretching. But this Hercules, this Echeveria Polydonus Hercules, it will start to, the stem will become more and more visible, and it won't look as much like a rosette as it does now. It's getting kind of loud over here in my backyard, so I'm going to finish watering and read some of my book to you from Chapter 4, Regional Tips on Overwintering. And real quick note, the Succulent Manual is available as a paperback. It's available as an interactive ebook, and you can also read it online at sucsforyou.com/the Succulent Manual. So all kinds of handy versions available for you in whatever format you prefer. How often you should water your overwintering succulents depends on several factors, including soil composition, the type of plant, and the light and temperature they're receiving. But a very general guide is to provide just enough water to keep their roots alive, which only requires a small drink, maybe once or twice a month. The following are excerpts from the section on overwintering in the Succulent Manual. There's a lot more to read, but these are the main points about watering and fertilizing before winter sets in. Depending on your climate, there's a good chance you'll need to protect your succulents when the temperature falls below 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 12 to 15 degrees Celsius. While many succulents can tolerate colder temperatures, this is a good range to start taking measures to prevent cold-related problems. How cold can you go? The first and most common question people have about overwintering their outdoor succulents is, when should I start worrying about protecting them from the cold? A very brief answer is when the temperatures are consistently below 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius, and you can't protect them from the rain. Succulents are either actively growing or in a state of rest called dormancy. They require warmth and several hours of bright light each day to encourage active growth. On the other hand, cooler temperatures and a reduction in daylight hours induces dormancy. And when a succulent is dormant, its metabolism is at a near standstill, and it requires little to no additional water after it breaks dormancy. If it continues to receive unwanted water, it will rot. If you can protect your collection from the rain, you can get away with leaving them outside in temperatures below 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius, and most will be just fine down to 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. Anything below 45 degrees Fahrenheit or 7 degrees Celsius for longer than a few days really is not ideal for most tender and juicy succulents like echeverias and string of pearls. So plan ahead on finding a bright warm spot to overwinter your prized rosettes and string of plants. Most succulents in our outdoor collections will need protection to survive long stretches of temperatures below 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius. And can you guess the very first and most important rule to overwintering your plants? That's right, friend, keeping the soil dry. That means you control exactly when and how much water your plant will receive. When it's time to feed your succulents, it's best to use a low nitrogen fertilizer added to a watering can, because this allows you to time the feedings to your plant's growing season and quickly cut back when it's time to start prepping them for the colder months. I stop fertilizing just as the first fall cold front moves into town. For the Gulf Coast region, this usually happens late September to mid-October. It typically doesn't stay below 70 degrees for long, so it's still safe to water on my regular schedule, allowing a period of time for succulents to process any nutrients still in their system and to flush the soil of any lingering fertilizer. As the temperature fluctuates between warm and cool from early fall to winter, I time my watering to the warmer days, 70 degrees or higher, while also reducing the amount of water given. Instead of flooding a pot so the water just runs through the drainage hole, I just want to give the plant enough water to eventually trickle down to the roots. I also cut back by skipping a watering day for some of my succulents, so if I was watering weekly, I switched to just twice a month. Water reduction is the primary method we use to transition our succulents to getting ready to hunker down for the winter, whether indoors or outside. And we want our plants to get used to being in dry soil for a few weeks or longer, sometimes a lot longer. Cutting back on water forces them to conserve water in their systems, and succulents are champions at doing just that by natural design. So with our plants in dry soil and on a fertilizer fast, we're off to a good start in preparing our overwintering plan. I would wait at least a week after moving them outside before watering them, and only if they look like they need a drink. Give them just enough water to reach the roots for now, and ideally they will show signs of waking up from any dormancy before deeper watering, like beginning to put out new growth in the form of new leaves coming in, or tip growth that looks brighter green. And you can resume fertilizing when the temperature will steadily remain above 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius, and the days are sunny enough to prevent adiolation. That's all for now. However, there's a lot more in the book that I didn't read from here. Remember, the Succulent Manual, A Guide to Care and Repair for All Climates, is going to help you figure out your overwintering plan, find strong grow lights based on how much coverage you need, and it will help you calculate for each plant, like how many hours of light are they going to need, how strong are these lights going to need to be depending on what type of plant you have, what other type of light you can provide. Like if you do have a bright sunny window, you're not going to necessarily need like a huge grow light system, but you will need some additional lighting more than likely. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching, and stay warm if it's getting cold where you are, and best of luck with overwintering your succulents.